I get it. You've spent hours scrolling through endless listings, watching glossy product videos, and reading glossy copy that promises lightning-fast receipts and never-ending paper rolls. Then you finally click buy, set the thing up behind the counter, and suddenly the printer jams on the first ticket, prints blurry text, or just sits there while customers wait. That kind of disappointment is why I wanted to make a video that actually digs into what the Micronics TSP1000 TSP1043C does in a real shop, and what it doesn't. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, this isn't a spec sheet walkthrough. I've spent the last few weeks talking to a handful of coffee shop owners, a boutique clothing retailer, and a pop-up food stall that all run their point of sale on a small Windows or iOS system. Their biggest pain point isn't the printer's DPI or the exact width of the paper. It's reliability during a rush, how often you have to swap rolls, and whether the printer plays nice with the cash register software they already love. The TSP1000 family is marketed as a high-speed receipt printer with a large roll capacity and a ticket stacker, so let's see how those promises translate to day-to-day use. Who should consider this printer? If you run a location that prints a steady stream of receipts, think coffee shops, quick-service restaurants, boutique retailers, or even a small event booth that uses a mobile POS, then the TSP1000's ability to keep printing without constantly pulling out fresh rolls is a genuine time saver. The roll capacity is noticeably larger than many entry-level models. You can fit a 300-foot roll and get through a full day of service without a single reload. In a busy morning rush, that means no awkward pauses while you fumble with tiny paper packs, and it also reduces the chance of paper-related jams that often happen when the roll gets too tight. Another practical advantage is the built-in ticket stacker. When you're printing multiple copies for a kitchen ticket, a customer receipt, and maybe a loyalty slip, the stacker neatly collects the prints and feeds them out one by one. In my test at a local bakery, the stacker kept the receipts organized even after printing 40 tickets in a row. The bakery owner told me that before switching, they used a basic thermal printer that would spit out a tangled mess, forcing staff to manually separate the slips, something that added a few seconds to each order and annoyed customers. Speed is where the high-speed claim really shows up. The printer reaches about 250 millimeters per second, which is fast enough that you barely notice the printing action while you're handing over a latte. In a controlled test, the difference between this model and a cheaper 180 millimeters per second unit was roughly 1 second per receipt. That might not sound like much, but when you're processing 50 orders an hour, those seconds add up to a smoother line and less stress on the staff. Now, the flip side. If you're a hobbyist who only prints occasional receipts for a home-based Etsy shop, or you run a small pop-up that does a handful of sales a day, the TSP1000 can feel overkill. The larger roll size means you'll have to buy longer rolls, which are pricier per foot than the tiny rolls you find for budget printers. The machine also sits a bit heavier than a pocket-size model, so it's not the best fit for a portable cart you need to move around constantly. Compatibility is another real-world concern. The TSP1000 supports USB, Ethernet, and Bluetooth, but you have to make sure your POS software can talk to it via the appropriate driver. In my conversations, a couple of owners mentioned that their older Windows-based software only recognized the printer after a driver update from Micronics site, which took an extra 1,520 minutes of troubleshooting. If you're using a cloud-based iOS system like Square or Shopify POS, the Bluetooth option works out of the box, but you'll still need to pair it correctly and keep the firmware up to date. So, the printer is flexible, but you should verify that your exact software version lists the TSP1000 as a supported device before you buy. One subtle drawback I observed is the noise level. The print head moves quickly, and while it's not deafening, it does produce a software that can be heard across a quiet CAF during the early morning. If your venue prides itself on a whisper-quiet atmosphere, think a high-end boutique or a library CAF, this might be a consideration. That said, most customers never notice it once they're handed their receipt. From a maintenance standpoint, the printer is designed to be simple. The paper path is clear, and there's a small cleaning swab that comes with the unit for occasional head cleaning. In the bakery test, after a week of heavy use, The prints remained crisp, and the only maintenance needed was a quick wipe of the platen. However, because the printer uses thermal printing, you won't be able to print color logos or graphics beyond the basic black text and simple line art. If your brand relies